Hi there, welcome to Mothership. I'm Carrie Grant, and today we're talking about your kids' behaviour, or should I say our kids' behaviour. Why do they act up? We have to get to the bottom of this stuff, and also what is it that sometimes they're so out of control we think, will I ever get my control back as a parent? So I've got expert parent Roma Norris with me. Thank you for coming in. I also want to hear from you. We want to hear from you today. So if you've got questions or comments or stories or advice, I'm always up for a bit of advice. Any new tips I want to take on board because we all want to become better parents, right? Okay, so Roma, tell me a little bit about your story. When did it begin?
Okay, so this really started for me when my son was about 2.5. At the time, I was just in survival trying to get through the day. But when I look back now, I realised that actually it was probably a period of neglect. And I don't know whether I really looked after him well enough at all.
Can I just say thank you for your honesty? I think so often as parents we feel like, you know, to say I was neglectful, that's such a big sentence to come out of your mouth. But I know obviously the story is going to get better, but the fact that you can even say that, I salute you wholeheartedly for that.
I just remember this time where, so I became pregnant in the midst of all of this and was really unwell with it. And I remember his little face peeking at the side of the bed saying, "Mummy, I need a wee-wee." And I just stared at him like, I can't get up.
Yeah. So you weren't well yourself.
I wasn't well, and probably I really shouldn't have been left with a little sweet one like that. But anyway, I did.
Many people will be going through situations like, I mean, that is a bit of that's a lot in a row, isn't it? You're moving around, you've got your partner being unfaithful, and you're not well, and you're pregnant. You know, for a little one, or any one of those things would be a big deal. But yeah, he got the full pack in one go.
Yeah, just to clarify, he actually wasn't unfaithful, and he was very much in integrity in the whole process. But just it threw me really badly, and him as well. And what really was happening was that we hit up against our own unresolved issues from childhood. So I was feeling all the feelings that I'd never known about from when I was 2 years old and my parents separated. And he was feeling all the feelings about his father leaving his mother. And we were kind of not really present in the current moment. We were just in old stuff from our childhoods, and we couldn't be there for our kid. And so during this really formative period in his brain development, that disturbance, I guess neglect, if you want to call it that, it was effectively a trauma, quite a big trauma for him. And so he was exhibiting signs of PTSD. By the time he was 3, by the time he was 5, he was highly anxious.
So PTSD being, just for people that don't know?
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
So that's the thing that soldiers get, isn't it? When they're away, you know, and they experience terrible war situations, come home and they can't regulate anything really.
That's right.
So this is now happening more and more in children. Yeah, different forms of it.
Children are actually really resilient. So the things like the accident where he bit through his tongue, we're built to recover from stuff like that. But it was more the day in, day out feeling of nobody's got this. That's the kind of thing that can really affect the developing brain, I discovered later.
Someone talked to me once about trauma being like a little piece of glass that's stuck in your hand. And, you know, if you get an emotional trauma, you might just recover from that. You might say, oh, I'll cry a bit and I'll get through it. Your physical trauma, you know, the body is built to heal, isn't it? So the tongue will heal. But if it's a trauma like that, of this kind of size, that little bit of glass, you gloss over it, the skin heals over it, but it's not actually healed. The glass is still in there. And before you know it, your hand doesn't move. Then your arm doesn't move. Before you know it, you can't go to work because your arm's not moving.
Yes.
And so trauma can become absolutely built up over a number of months and years till you have these explosions. And so talk us through your son. What happened to him? He's at what age at this point?
He's by the time he was 5, he was really anxious, super aggressive. He had phases of being suicidal, not just saying extreme words to get our attention, but actually getting into a whole funk for a whole morning where he would get obsessed with wanting to throw himself in front of lorries, or he was trying to get out of the windows. He was biting himself, hitting himself. He would attack members of the public. It was really precarious taking him out into the world. You know, we didn't know what he was going to do. He would run off. He would Somebody called the police on me one time when he started throwing his bike around, and it was really extreme. He'd have long, aggressive meltdowns where he was really trying to hurt me, scratch my face, pull my hair, kick my face. He's broken my nose, he's given me a black eye. Bless him.
Yeah, this is a 5-year-old.
Really distressed kid. And by the time he was 6, 7, you know, he was getting stronger, and this was really continuing. He was hurting his little baby sister. Really vicious if you know, we didn't get there in time.
Now, we know that all behaviour is communication. All behaviour is communication. No matter how extreme that behaviour might be, they are trying to say something, aren't they? What was he trying to say?
Yeah, well, at the time, I was beyond myself. I just didn't know. I was, you know, trying so hard to figure this out. Every night, you know, I would get him to bed and it would take hours because he would be so anxious he couldn't fall asleep, and he'd be like wetting himself and waking up and staying awake. And if I ever got a shred of time, I'd be kind of scouring the internet looking for answers, or I'd be doing coaching sessions with parenting experts. And it was, you know, it felt impossible to find an answer. And I was finding myself losing it.
I was going to say, for you as a parent as well, how did you feel?
I was really deeply committed to parenting in a gentle and kind way, and yet I was finding myself losing it and screaming in his little face, or grabbing him just a bit too hard, or like really losing my patience a lot of the time.
And often as parents, I think we either take one of two roads. Either we say, okay, I need to be really strict. I'm going to, you know, be really strong here and aggressive. Or we do the other path, which is just let them get on with it because I don't really know what to do. And this parenting thing is not for me. So you just become the totally passive parent. And really, we don't want to be either of those things, do we?
Yeah.
Can I just touch on, before we move on, just the impact, because I've had this same experience myself. You know, when your child sits there and says, I want to die, I don't want to be in this world.
Yeah.
Can you just, I don't know if you can still access that, but what impact did that have on you as a mum?
Yeah, it's devastating. It's the most sickening feeling. Like, this child is really distressed and something's wrong, and probably it's my fault.
That's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think also you tend to feel like you're not part of the world anymore. I know for me, you know, you'd go to the school gate and it would be parents going, oh, I need to get my child through their SATs. And you'd think, I need to keep my child alive.
Yeah.
You know, suddenly your priorities are totally different to everybody else's.
Yeah.
So tell me, you mentioned there that you went on parenting courses or experts you saw. Did that make any difference? And who provided that? How did you access that?
We went to the paediatrician and we explained the situation. They were sort of checking us out for autism. Some of his behaviours were similar to those displayed by autistic kids. And she basically said it was behavioural, and she sent us to play therapy, which was, you know, it's really nice to have the support of somebody, but essentially wasn't really going to change anything.
Now, is this the service that you would have accessed through your GP, I'm guessing?
They referred us to a local charity, I think it was. Yeah.
So what you have on your local authority website is a thing called the local offer. And on the local offer, it will tell you all that is available in your area to help you with these kinds of things. Sometimes accessing those services is really, really hard though, or you need to have a diagnosis of something, and if they don't have a diagnosis of something, you don't get the services. So was that your experience?
Yeah, we didn't have a diagnosis, but luckily this particular charity were happy to work with us anyway. I think we went privately for a couple of things like occupational health because the waiting list was so long. But yeah, we didn't really get anywhere with any of that stuff. We used a lot of energy trying to find answers, and nothing was really helping. And then one day I came across an advert for an instructor training for hand-in-hand parenting, which I hadn't even heard of at that point. And something hooked me, and I started watching all their videos online. And I came across Patty Whitfler, who's the founder of Hand in Hand, who's just the most gorgeous woman, who's really seen something in how children are and how we can respond differently. And I figured that if I could learn this stuff well enough to teach it to other parents, then maybe I could help my own kid.
Wow, so we've got a bit of a journey that's just gone on there. Let's just stretch that out a little bit. Now, if you've got parenting courses that you've been on that you have found really helpful, I'd love to hear what those are. You know, I'm always up for some tips. I don't know about you, but things that you think, I tried this with my child and it really, really works. Sometimes they're really simple things. But if there's sort of whole parenting courses as well, do let us know, because we want to hear about them. So do keep putting your comments in. Also, at some point, we'll get to this. If you've got, my child does this particular thing and I need some help, do write that stuff down. We'll try and answer some of your questions. Okay, so you looked at hand in hand. Tell me, what are the core principles of that? What would they be?
So we're moving away from the idea that we need to teach children how to be, towards the idea that your child is already innately good. Your child...
That's a worldview. Okay, so that's an absolute worldview about your child, which I am imagining, seeing the behaviour that you have just described, would have been quite a hard selling to you.
Well, I think I could connect with that on a very basic level, but in those moments where he was kicking me or he was hurting his sister, I hated him. I was furious with him. And it was really hard to shift my perspective. It took a long time to get to a point where I could see his behaviour as a cry for help, which is what it really is.
So you're dealing with a number of things there, though, aren't you? Because you're dealing with the behaviour itself. You want to say, stop doing this. But also you're trying to meet those unmet needs that are in him and what he's trying to voice through the violence.
Yeah.
So how did you do that?
So... yeah, based on the idea that your child is good and they are naturally sweet and cooperative and generous and they want to get on well, they want to share and they want to play and learn.
So you're believing in them.
You're believing in them, you're upholding their goodness even when they don't feel... So our children are all of those things when they feel connected to us, when they feel a sense that somebody in this world has got me, somebody understands how I feel, and that, I think we're all seeking that feeling.
100%, yeah.
And when we have that, we can be our naturally sweet, relaxed, easygoing selves. But it's remembering that our children are still good even when they lose that sense of connection and they get overwhelmed by feelings. And it's when we're full of feelings that our behaviour tends to go off track. So the tools from Hand in Hand are therapeutic parenting tools, and they're based on current neuroscience, and they're also trauma-informed. And I think that's why they really were able to turn things around for my boy, because what I could now start to do was connect with him in a way that allowed him to recover from all this hurt that he'd been through.
Do you know what I love about this? I love the fact that you've been talking for 5 minutes and we haven't heard a strategy. I love that, because you're talking primarily about your worldview of your child. And I think so much of this starts with a mindset change, but we put the cart before the horse as parents. We think, I need a new strategy. Someone give me a strategy. Tell me, you know, if he runs up and downstairs 15 times a day, that's going to change it. And we'll, you know, think, great, I'll do that. I can do that. But a mindset change is like, you know, that's like moving the Titanic, isn't it? That's a big thing. So you had to, you first had to make that mindset change.
And there are very, you know, simple and pragmatic strategies in this approach. And what allowed me to get to the place of really changing my mindset was the kind of foundation principle of the approach, which is something we call listening partnerships.
What's that?
That's where two parents exchange time to listen to one another.
Two parents that are in the same relationship, or just random parents?
No, so it's better if you don't do it with your partner.
It's just instead of arguing then.
It's much,
you're not listening!
Yeah, much harder to really listen in this way to your partner. No, it's where you pair up with another parent. It might be someone you don't even know, who's in even a different country. And you exchange time to listen to one another with the focus on releasing emotion. And releasing emotion, so through crying and laughing, or having a really good rant, or getting a sweat up, yawning even, that's actually the body's way to recover from stress and tension. And we're not supposed to cart around all this tension in our body. Most of us are walking around so full of feelings that it actually takes down our ability to think well. And in order to really be available for our children, we need to clear out all these feelings that we're holding in our body. So I had a lot to work through when I came to Hand in Hand, and I dived in really deep. I started doing listening partnerships every day, and I've actually been doing that for the last 4 years now.
Not every day.
Every day. And
how do you have time to parent?
Well, it's become my practice. It has, I do it instead of watching TV or going to the pub. This has been something that has really taken priority because it has helped me so much. I love
the fact that we still haven't talked about what you did with your son. This is all about what you've done, about yourself.
Yeah,
interesting.
That's the secret, Carrie. We go to this thinking, I just need to get my kid to behave. And actually, what we really need to do is look at what's happening with us.
Yeah. So is anyone thinking, this is all a load of rubbish, I want some strategies that just make sure they're under the thumb and they're doing what they're told to do? Or are you sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, that's what I need a mindset change? I'd love to hear from you. So we'd love to hear from you. So do write your comments below. Okay, so tell me, so you've done the listening thing, you've changed your mindset, you're now looking at your child, you're thinking, wow, he's a really beautiful little boy. You know, he's got problems, but he's there. He's great. You believe you're championing him. You then learn to listen to your own heart and sense and your own emotions. At what point and how does that feed back to the child?
Okay, so first of all, I'm pouring out all my own feelings, all my heartbreak about what's happened in my family and my ex-husband, and all my doubt about this kid, like he's going to be a criminal, he's not going to be able to go to school, he's never going to have friends.
Are you in my head? Yeah, sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, all of that stuff, that's what's swirling around in our heads, preventing us from being available to our children. So having somewhere to vent all of that, dump it all out, have some really big cries about how hopeless this feels and how exhausted I am and how I don't know what I'm doing here and how isolated I feel and how there's no one there for me and how nobody gave this to me when I was a kid. When I can clear all of that stuff out the way, it makes space for me to then go in and be able to listen to him and how much he's hurting. And that's a tool that we call Staylistening, where we move in close when our children get upset. And we literally stay and we listen for the duration of the upset. And there's a particular way of listening that helps children stay with their feelings.
Pray tell.
So
I'm going to be writing in the comments box soon.
Okay, so usually when our kids become upset, often if you notice, actually we tend to get a bit panicky and we try to fix it. We try to distract them.
Oh, fixing it, that's just the worst thing you can try and do.
Right. Here, it's okay, I'll get another one. Or we distract them with, oh, come on, let's go over here, or let's find daddy, or don't you want to go and play on your Xbox now? Or we scold them, stop making that noise, that's enough of that. Or we, bribe them, threaten them, and many different ways of responding that take them away from how they're feeling, try to shut down the feeling. And what we're doing here is actually trying to encourage and really allow the feeling. So we'll move in and we'll say something like, I'm right here. Hey, I see you're really upset. I'm so sorry that's hard. You really wanted the red one. You'll do fine with the blue one. And all of this time they're going, wah, and they're getting really worked up. And it seems like we're making it worse.
Yeah, but you're not.
But actually what we're allowing is for all these feelings to make their way out of the body. And when that can happen...
that's so interesting, because I also think that sometimes children don't have the language. We have to help them with that language. I know for my adoptive son, one of the things, and he was 2 when he came to us, and he was grieving the loss of his foster carer, and I would go into his room, and for me it was about being present. I'm going to be present. So I would sit in his room and I would say, I'm just going to sit in this bit of the room, because he didn't want to come near me, because I'm the woman that's taken him away from the person he loves, what he would think of as his mum. And I would say, I'm just going to sit here. And when you're ready, you don't have to come here, but I'm just going to sit here. And if you want to, you can come and sit with me and I can hold you. And he would spend half an hour, he would shout at me, he'd throw stuff at me.
Yeah.
And after a little while, it was so sweet. Every time he would reverse into me. It's like he couldn't make eye contact because that was too vulnerable and he felt too ashamed at the neediness that he had within him. He would sit on my lap and I would say, you really miss her, don't you? And he would look at me like, how do you know this stuff? Yeah. Yes. And then he would cry.
Sounds like you're
and
totally
then
natural.
hold. I think that's about looking beyond words. I think when you've got autistic children, you have to look beyond words because you don't always get words. And so for me, it was a sort of a shoe-in, I guess, for when I then adopted, because I think, okay, I need to just preempt what might be going on here. I can see some behaviour. So if I sit with you and I am present and I wait on you, I think some of it for me is often now and again with autistic children, they don't have the language. So I'm not going to try and talk you out of this. I'm not going to try and talk you down. I'm just going to sit with you.
Yeah, so this is the realm of feelings rather than thinking, and we're trying to keep them in their feelings.
So that is the opposite of what he felt he was able to do before, which is why his feelings were escalating into, I'm going to jump under a bus or whatever and, be really extreme.
Yeah.
So what impact did that have on him?
So he got to now work on all this stuff for actually really some months it took for this hurt to find its way out. Long periods of crying, and he would choose some pretext. It wasn't ever, the apparent upset wasn't ever really what he was working on. He would get upset about, I don't know, his sister having something that he didn't have, or
But there was a deeper emotional connection going on that you were then thinking, it's fine, if it's about the red or the blue sweet, it doesn't really matter because we're actually dealing with something underneath it.
Exactly, yeah. So keeping that all in perspective and just really allowing space for him to keep working through all of that stuff. And then, children, when they hold a lot of fear in their system, which is really typical when there's been some early hurts going on, it could be, to do with the birth or some early separation or, something that happened where fear went in. They tend to get quite rigid as a way of coping.
Yeah, control everything, control my environment. That way I can predict what will happen because life is unpredictable.
Yeah. So it was through setting limits around these rigidities.
What do you mean by that? What would that be, for example?
For example, where he would rigidly need to have things a certain way, like he would have to have his mealtime exactly like this, or he had to listen to his audiobook to fall asleep, or he had to have the light on. That's where I would go in gently and say, we're not going to have the light on tonight, love. You're going to be just fine without the light. And he would get to really lose it about, he would get hysterical.
Most parents would think at this point, it's only a light, just let him have it.
Yeah, and it's not actually about enforcing that he can't have the light. The light is just a symbol for him to come up against so that he can work on the feelings that are making it feel impossible to have the light off. So I would just keep affirming, you'll do okay without the light. And that allows him to get hysterical and really lose the plot about how he can't handle that. And through doing that, he's not really working on his fear of the dark. He's actually working on just his general fear that's in his system about everything.
And also learning to live with uncomfortable feelings. I think we spend so much of our lives trying to avoid uncomfortable feelings rather than learning to sit in them. Okay, this is really hugely uncomfortable, but I'm just going to sit in this because it will pass.
Yeah.
It will pass because it always does. But the hardest thing as a parent is to watch your child with uncomfortable feelings because they've got to learn it. They've got to learn that, haven't they?
And that's actually how we build resilience in our children. When we say, I'm going to be with you while you're feeling upset. That's all we need. We can actually handle uncomfortable feelings when we've got someone in connection with us.
I can see why you do your own listening stuff because that must be really difficult once you've listened to a lot of hysterical stuff. I know I have a lot of hysteria going on around me and it's just kind of, this is respite care basically coming into work. So you need that other break, don't you? You need that other place where you're able to take it. Okay, let's have a little look at what the internet is saying. So ask the internet, right, it says effective discipline is not about punishment.
Right.
Agreed or not agreed? What do you think? Do you agree with that or not? Effective discipline is not about punishment. You know, I think over the years people have changed that word. You still get consequences, so it doesn't feel quite as punitive. But there is this sense of you've done something wrong and therefore you will pay for it.
Yes.
Thoughts on that?
Well, there's a study on corporal punishment, which is obviously a more extreme end of punishment. And they looked at lots of studies done over, I think, about 60 years. And what they found was that actually the only result of corporal punishment is kind of increased anxiety, increased antisocial behaviour. When children grow up, having been punished physically, they're much more likely to resort to domestic violence or aggression as adults.
Lots of people would say, well, I got smacked as a kid, it never did me any harm. That is definitely a phrase that I hear.
Yeah. No,
but it possibly did do us some harm, but we didn't realise.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think possibly we tend to bury quite how hurtful that is, because we really want to see our parents as good. And, you know, they're doing their absolute best with all the love in their hearts. And when they lose it, it's not their fault. It's an automatic physiological thing that happens when we lose it.
So if we're not
with
doing
kids.
punishments, what do we do instead?
So what we do instead is prioritising connection in every moment. And what that means is lifting out the feelings that get in the way of children feeling our warmth and connection. So
let me just apply this to something. So, okay,
yeah, give me an example.
My child will not put their shoes on before they go to school, and now they've thrown their shoes down the toilet and tried to flush the toilet, and one of them is stuck in the toilet, and now I've got to get out because I've got other 2 children to drop off at school. You know, I may be losing it as a parent. Quite frankly, at that point, I'm not going to be thinking I need to regain the connection. I'm going to be thinking I need to get these kids to school, and now I don't. I only have one shoe.
Yeah.
How do we
I've
do
totally
it?
been there. My kid does things with shoes. So we think we need to teach them that throwing their shoes in the toilet is bad and they mustn't do that again, right?
Yeah.
But actually they already know that.
That's true.
They're highly attuned to social norms. They have a very advanced sense of morality. If you ever need to know right and wrong, just check in with a 5-year-old. They know this stuff already. We don't need to teach them anything. What's really happening is that they've got feelings. They're either saying, I'm worried about school, or something happened yesterday that I haven't had a chance to tell you about yet, Mum, or whatever. I'm full of feelings and I'm going to show you that I'm hurting by kicking off about my shoes so that I can have you right here with me. Because even having you right here with me when you're really cross with me is better than me being on my own.
Yeah.
And so how the listening partnership comes into this, I've actually had to turn around from my kid. You know, I've been listening to her, okay, it's time to put your shoes on. She's screaming. I'm getting really panicked, like we're going to be really late for school now. And instead of me adding my feelings onto her feelings, which is never going to be helpful, I've actually managed to even just turn my back and say, I'm going to be right back. And I just turn around and I imagine I'm phoning my listening partner. So I only have to imagine it now.
Yeah. Okay, so that de-escalates you, but how are you going to de-escalate your child and get into school without getting a letter from the attendance officer for being late?
So when I feel calmer, I can go back to her and I can say, I've run out of time to listen to you now, sweetheart. We actually have to get in the car. And because I'm calmer, I can remember that this isn't actually an emergency right now.
Yeah.
It felt like an emergency a few minutes ago.
Life, can we?
But
yeah.
These are just feelings.
So are we waiting for them to de-escalate as well?
Ideally, if we've got time, we'll stay with them until they've processed the whole upset. But you don't always have time. So in that situation, you're just going to scoop your kid in your arms and you're going to toss her in the car and you'll take the shoes with you. And I don't know, maybe you've got a spare pair because one's in the toilet, right?
Yeah, they're hopping for the rest of the day, but that's okay. They'll get muscles on that one leg, which is great. Okay, I'm really interested in this. I love the principles of it. I mean, I think it's always hard to unpack everything in half an hour, isn't it? But I can see very much that concept of being present, listening, dealing with your own stuff. I think often as parents, we think, it's so stupid, isn't it? Why do we think we become parents and suddenly all our past is dealt with? It isn't. And it all comes back in a big way and slaps us around the face, and you know, it's hard. So I guess just the concept of being able to deal with our own stuff that then leaves us ready and available to our children. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And where is your son at now? Not where is he, but like, is he better? Is he?
He's doing so well now. He's thriving. He's a really happy, sparkly-eyed 10-year-old. He has friends. He goes to school now. He has caught up the kind of academic lag from he couldn't go to school before. Yeah. And
for how long?
Well, until he was 8. He just couldn't have handled that environment.
His head was too full. I often talk about that. Your head's too full. How can you learn if your head is full with all this stuff? Yeah.
But yeah, he's got a beautiful relationship with his sister. He loves babies and animals. I mean, he's just a gorgeous, gorgeous boy.
Oh, and that's the son you wanted all along, right?
That's the son he really was. He just had some hurt in the way.
Well, I feel like I need at least another 4 half-hour sessions to get through some of this stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Carrie.
And how great to have a success story. You know, when you think about all of that really extreme behaviour, and for some of us, it's not even that extreme, but these principles can really, really work. So it's really helpful. We still want to hear from you. So if you've got ideas, comments, do keep them coming. Thank you so much, Roma.
Thanks,
You're
Carrie.
fantastic. I want to sort of come and sit at your feet and learn more.
You already got this. You get it.
We'll see you next time.
What?